Friends, today the world order has become multipolar. The era of America's unchallenged dominance has ended. Until a few years ago, there was only one pole in the world, only one superpower, the United States of America. But gradually, countries like China, Russia and India began to rise. Power was no longer concentrated in a single country. Instead, it became distributed across multiple poles. Today, emerging powers such as Russia, China and India ensure that America alone does not dictate rules to the entire world. No doubt, the US is still a superpower, but it is no longer the global hegemon. Its ability to control global outcomes is slowly fading. Nations like Russia, China and India are leading the post-Western order. You may know that recently, the 25th summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was held in the Chinese city of Tianjin. China, as the host of this summit, strongly promoted the vision of a multipolar world order. Without directly naming the United States, Chinese President Xi Jinping launched sharp criticisms against it, saying that in today's times, no country can impose its own rules on others. The era of bullying is over, and no nation's hegemony can prevail anymore. Jinping's message was clearly directed at America.
This was bound to happen. America's actions have been such. As we know, the Trump administration has been imposing tariffs on many countries to create economic pressure. Xi Jinping strongly criticized this kind of power politics. According to China, such unilateral actions reflect a Cold War mentality and go against the multilateral trading system backed by the World Trade Organization. Obviously, since Trump's tariffs are disrupting global trade, China was clearly sending this message to America. And America received the message as well. An agitated President Trump posted that China, along with other countries, was conspiring against the United States. In other words, China successfully conveyed the message it wanted to. America noted how China managed to bring together Global South countries during the summit and how, by openly challenging US dominance, China tried to position itself as the leader of the Global South. It is well known that China has long been attempting to challenge the US-led world order.
And this was clearly visible at the SCO summit. China left no stone unturned in promoting a multipolar global order at the Tianjin summit. It called for greater cooperation among SCO member states across various sectors. With a combined GDP of nearly $30 trillion, Xi Jinping emphasized leveraging the huge economic potential of the SCO. By doing so, China sought to project the SCO as a counterweight to Western-led institutions like the G7. All these developments signal the arrival of a multipolar world order. Multipolarity is no longer just an emerging possibility. It is now a present reality. Gone are the days when the world was bipolar or unipolar. Today, many countries and groups hold influence in the global political and economic system. Global affairs are no longer determined by the will of a single country. Instead, power is shared among multiple poles, leading to moments of cooperation but also competition and conflict between nations.
Today, countries are forming alliances based on shared interests. Instead of confining themselves to rigid ideological blocs, they are exploring new coalitions. A good example is India. India engages with the United States through the Quad, while at the same time engaging with Russia and China through BRICS and the SCO. Similarly, many countries are choosing diverse alliances according to their interests rather than sticking to fixed blocs. This is why today's world presents a complex web of relationships. Diplomacy is becoming increasingly complicated. Countries now come together more out of strategic necessity than ideology. For instance, you may have noticed that Islamic countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Oman are strengthening ties with India rather than Pakistan, because in their strategic calculations, India holds more importance than Pakistan. Another example is Turkey. Although Turkey is a NATO member, it has still purchased defense equipment such as the S-400 air defense system from Russia. So, for collective security guarantees, Turkey remains part of US-led NATO. But to meet its defense needs, it buys weapons from the very country that NATO was originally created to contain. As you can see, such diverse and complex ties are today's reality.
Another reality is that emerging economies in Asia, Africa and Latin America are gradually gaining prominence and advocating for their interests in global governance. In the New World Order, the role of Global South countries is expanding and their voice is becoming stronger. The inclusion of the African Union in the G20 is one such example. This signals that the global system is becoming more inclusive. Naturally, this shift does not sit well with Western countries. The economic realignments of rising powers are limiting Western interventions. You must have noticed how Western nations impose sanctions on Russia, but with the support of India and China, Russia managed to mitigate their impact. The West's plan to isolate Russia did not succeed. Take the recent SCO summit, for instance. At this summit, Russia, China, and India sent a strong message of unity. The image of the three sovereign leaders standing together became a subject of discussion. Together, Russia, India, and China form the RIC triangle. If these three act collectively, they can provide an alternative to the Eurocentric and Euro-Atlantic order. This is precisely why the revival of the SCO feels like a thorn to Western countries. The ongoing geopolitical reconfiguration in Asia is making the West increasingly nervous.
And if we look closely, the West itself is responsible for the situation. Let's understand how. After the Second World War, the world was bipolar. The United States and the Soviet Union were the two poles. A long Cold War followed between them over global dominance. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, bringing the Cold War to an end. After this, there was only one center of power in the world, America. The US held hegemony over the world and dictated global norms according to its own interests. Without restraint, America shaped global institutions like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization to suit its preferences and expanded NATO according to its strategic calculations. Whether it was Iraq, Libya, or Afghanistan, the US intervened wherever it wanted. There was no one to challenge it. It was the sole superpower. But then came the 2008 global financial crisis, caused by poor economic policies which raised questions about America's credibility. Internal weaknesses and its reputation for war profiteering further damaged its image. Being entangled in wars for such a long time distracted America, and this gave Russia the chance to research and China the opportunity to advance technologically.
China advanced at a very rapid pace. In 2013, it launched its Belt and Road Initiative, and under this program, it invested over $1 trillion across more than 150 countries. Through this, China created dependency by distributing loans, thereby expanding its influence in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. By offering economic incentives, China very cleverly built partnerships with many nations and encouraged them to trade in its currency, the yuan. Today, more than 40 countries are trading in yuan. Institutions such as the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the New Development Bank are providing funding to many countries, rising as alternatives to the US-dominated IMF and World Bank. Alongside this, China and Russia are also pushing the trend of de-dollarization. In this way, US political and economic influence is facing a powerful pushback. America's high-handedness is even bringing together regional rivals like India and China. Russia and China too have set aside their border disputes and come together.
Apart from flawed policies and arrogance, military overextension has also become a burden for the United States. America has built more than 750 military bases across over 80 countries. Maintaining these bases costs enormously. History shows that such overstretch strains the budget and often leads to decline. And in any case, what is the point of all this show of power if you cannot even stop the rise of adversaries and challengers? What use are advanced weapons and a mammoth defense budget if fighters and slippers in Salwar can chase you away? To the extent that you are forced to flee so hastily that you leave behind billions of dollars worth of weapons for the very people you were fighting against. Is this how a superpower should behave? In 2021, the manner in which the US fled Afghanistan made it a subject of ridicule across the world. Then in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, and in 2022, it seized even more territory in Ukraine. What did America do? Practically nothing, except inviting Putin to Alaska and rolling out the red carpet. Clearly, Europe, which is already a declining pole, and America, which is a declining superpower, have both completely failed to stop Russia. They have been unable to halt Russia, and they have been equally incapable of stopping China.
In this way, the world has moved from being bipolar to unipolar and now to multipolar. Because of its unreliability, America has alienated many countries. A recent example is its failed attempt to bully India. This policy is badly backfiring. With this blunder, America is undoing years of effort and pushing India away. As a result, India is improving its ties with China. Xi Jinping took full advantage of US-India tensions and positioned China as a stable alternative to the United States. He did not let this opportunity slip. By reducing tensions with India, he further complicated America's challenges. With this smart move, Xi Jinping has undermined America's Indo-Pacific strategy. America wants to use India as a counterweight to China. But by mistreating India, the Trump administration practically handed over the opportunity of partnership to China on a silver platter, and China grabbed it with both hands. The more America alienates India, the closer India will move toward China, and the less effective the Quad will become. This means China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific will only keep increasing. Back in 2017, by pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the US had already lost the chance to invest in the Global South, a void that China quickly filled. Now once again, because of poorly informed advisors like Peter Navarro, America is making bad economic decisions.
Because of its incompetent leaders, America is moving backward instead of progressing. Poor decision making is weakening America's own position while strengthening that of its rivals. US national debt is skyrocketing, already crossing $37 trillion, and the vulnerabilities of its economic model are now clearly visible. After dominating in manufacturing and exports, China is now overtaking America in technology as well. By pulling out of the Paris Climate Treaty and the Iran nuclear deal, the US has eroded its soft power. In a way, this is being seen as America's retreat from its role of global leadership. By calling its NATO partners freeloaders and tilting toward Russia, Trump also alienated Europe. Countries like France and Germany have now started talking about European strategic autonomy. The whole world has seen how America has failed to stop the Israel-Hamas conflict and the Russia-Ukraine war. No matter how much propaganda the White House spreads, the truth is that, despite all its efforts, America has not been able to broker peace in either of these two major wars.
America's weak governance, struggling with foreign policy blunders, and domestic challenges is now visible to all. This has damaged America's global image. Social crises like gun violence, the rising case of mental illness, a crumbling healthcare system, and glaring economic inequality all reflect the neglect of domestic leadership. Self-inflicted damages like these have eroded America's unipolar status. In just a few years, China is set to surpass the US in terms of GDP. Russia is steadily expanding its influence in Eurasia. India, by refusing to bow to US pressure, is pursuing the path of strategic autonomy. Together, these three countries are laying the foundation of a new and complex global order. It wouldn't be wrong to say that today's America simply does not want to acknowledge present realities. It continues to live in the illusion of past glory, convinced by its own false narrative of greatness. But if you refuse to acknowledge reality, how can you adapt to it? The reality is that the chapter of the unipolar world order has closed, and the multipolar world order is here.